Hi everyone. So I have been playing around with Mistral AI for a minute. If you're not familiar, Mistral is an AI company. They have their own models. They have a couple interesting products. And the one we'll be focusing on is Vibe, which is basically their own model CLI, if you will, their own harness. And I think it's really interesting. It's really fun and interesting. I've been playing around with it for a minute, and I wanted to talk to you about my experiences and sort of what you should expect when you use this tool. Now, Vibe is, as they say, agentic coding that meets you where you work, write, test, and deploy autonomously with full code-based content. And it's very similar to the TUIs we've seen for the past couple months. So Claude Code, Codex, Opencode, and a bunch of others. Again, when I say similar, I don't mean like one for one, but like, basically coding on your terminal, as it were. So that is Mistral. If you're curious about what they do, you can take a look at them, but that's not what we're here to do today. So today I wanted to show you what happens, what the performance is like when we put Mistral Vibe against Opencode's harness. So again, Vibe is really just a harness, right? And it is running Mistral Medium 3.5 high. So it's Mistral's own model. And Opencode is Opencode. If you're not familiar with Opencode, well, it's Opencode. It's a terminal. It's a TUI that allows you to bring your own API keys and basically work with any model that you want, as opposed to Vibe, Claude Code, Codex, and the other, as opposed to Vibe, Codex, Claude Code, and vendor-locked TUIs, you can bring in your API keys and use pretty much any model. With Vibe, you can only use Mistral focus model, Codex, OpenAI's GPT models, Claude Code, Opus. You get the idea. And so the goal of this video is to explore how big of a deal harnesses are when we are working with terminal interfaces, right? When we're working with the TUI. Now, there is the narrative that the models are really just like the engine, right? And then the harness is everything else that runs that engine. And that is an interesting idea that is being talked about for a minute, where we're moving from like, maybe not moving, but we're exploring harness engineering, right? If that's the right way to put it, where while you may have a very capable model, the harness sort of makes or breaks the model, right? And this doesn't mean when you have a really terrible model, the harness will automatically make it any better than it is. So the best way to think about this analogy is to use cars. We're going to make use of cars, right? If we put a race driver into a Honda Civic, they'll drive the car really well, right? Obviously, it wouldn't move as fast as a Ferrari, right? But it'll move really fast relative to an average driver. And when we put an average driver into a sports car, it doesn't mean the car automatically moves really fast, right? The driver makes the car as much as the car makes the driver. And that's kind of like how we are going to be looking at harnesses, as it were. And this video is an exploration, the beginning of that idea, the beginning of exploring that idea, and that how much of a difference the harnesses make when you have the exact same prompt, the exact set of tasks to a model, and how well do they perform. So I already ran a series of tests, and here are the prompt. I put these one shot into both harnesses. So I was running Mistral 3.5 medium on Vibe and also on Opencode, and these were the prompts that I gave each of them. And we have the results in the web browser here, and I just want to go over them and sort of talk to you about what to expect or how to begin to think about the effects of when you use a different harness for a particular project. And the intent here is for us to begin to explore the idea of what happens when we make use of different harnesses while working with an agent, while working with a coding model. Now, this first one is the results from Vibe. So it's a simple Kanban board. And again, a lot of these aren't particularly complex. We're not, solving cancer here, right? We're trying to just start from the basic and work our way upwards to, solving and exploring this idea and just like, having practical experiences as to what it works, as to what it looks like. So this is a simple Kanban board. This is Vibe's version, basically Mistral's own TUI. And this is Opencode's version, right? The differences aren't particularly crazy, but Vibe looks a lot more aesthetically pleasing. Opencode is just like, it was just trying to get the job done. Vibe sort of put some thought into it, right? We can create a new card, priority high. And we add the new card at 10. I think we can move it between different boards. And that works, pretty well. We could get rid of it and we could load sample cards, move things around to see how well they work, and we're good. So this works well, so to say. And this obviously was one-shotted. I didn't have to make any crazy modifications, and it just worked well. And this is Opencode's version, and we can add the card. So priorities by, numbers, level. So Opencode harness chose a different approach to this, and we don't have descriptions, and the UI isn't great, all right? So we can see that the exact same model is performing very, very differently with a different harness in a different environment. And that's just what I'm trying to get us to begin to realize or to think of at this point in time. It's like the harness, to an extent, makes the model the same way the model makes the harness, used loosely, and it's time to be corrected, obviously. But this is a practical experience of what that looks like, right? So I guess the question to ask ourselves as we write software, as we build applications is the harness helping me solve my problem efficiently? Or do I need to handhold the harness while executing the task, right? As you can see, this is a significantly mid representation of the exact same thing, the exact same prompt. So Opencode takes an L here in my book, in my opinion. And we're just going to we're just going to move on to the next set of prompts that we worked with. Now, the second test or the second prompt or the second example is a budget projection application that we built. This is Vibe's version, and this is Opencode's version. Again, it's pretty obvious who is putting in a lot more thought into these things, right? Vibe is definitely going out of its way to make this practical to a user. And then we have Opencode. Opencode just wants to get the job done and move on. And it is, pretty buggy from what I can see. Again, pretty buggy. And with the Vibe, we just, we have these things that work pretty well. We have a budget. And we can see results, monthly runway, we don't have any of that. We have goals. And, it's useful. It's useful. It's functional. It looks good. Again, one shot. We're not going out of our way to completely over-engineer these prompts. It's just like if the harness has the barest minimum set of information to work with for whatever reason, right? How well would it perform? Now, it goes without saying that when we're building software with agents, we should give it as much context and as much detail as possible. However, who's to say that given these results, it'll perform that much better. It'll perform at an excellent level like what we just got from Vibe. So Opencode clearly isn't doing a really good job when it comes to how it is producing the code we're working with, the product we've asked it to build. And I could really just stop the video here at this point because it seems like a losing streak for Opencode. But it's the idea, it's the point that the harness matters. It's the exact same models. They are the exact same model, Mistral Medium 3.5, Mistral Medium 3.5. So the exact same models, but significantly different results, right? As we can see. Also the exact same prompt. And 3-player quiz, this looks different here. This is Vibe's version, and this is Opencode's version. Opencode has a timer that we have to meet in that point in time. Otherwise, it stops. So the time we have no control over the start and stop when working with Opencode's version. It's just like, it gives us the UI and we have to make use of it. Otherwise, we're out of time. And once we answer the question, we have the next question shows up and, it doesn't feel like a very intuitive experience, right? But that is Opencode's version. Let's take a look at Vibe's version. So we start the quiz, which is how it should be done. We have a timer and we can answer the questions. So now we wait till the timer rounds up and we see who wins. So Vibe's version is a little bit buggy. Nothing happens when we're done with round 1. It doesn't automatically take us to round 2. And we're just stuck here. So, that's what we have to deal with. Again, not perfect. So I guess we can give it to Opencode for the fact that it is functional at all. And even though I think some people might prefer Opencode's version, I think I do prefer Opencode's version. It's a little bit simple, but I don't like the fact that we don't have like buttons to start and stop the timers and stuff. So Opencode wins here. So here's a very simple server log UI. And the goal here is, you can get to see the logs on your server if you're building something or whatever. But again, I know no one is just going to go out and ask the agent to build a server log and that's all they need. It's going to add a bit more context and they have a lot more data to work with. And that was one of the things I wanted to test. I wanted to see which of the agent or which of the model would be smart enough to populate this with demo data. None of them did, all right? And I do think I prefer Opencode's version here. So, that's just my personal preference. They aren't particularly any more functional than the other. It just, sort of looks nicer. Because as a server log, it just looks cleaner. I know what to expect. I know what to work with. I know what to expect and I can work with this. So Opencode wins here and that makes it a tie. It's 2-2 on both ends. Now we have a side-by-side code diff tool. This is Vibe's version and Vibe was able to build it out and it worked. I don't have the, equivalent for Opencode because in the one shot, it was building a Python terminal project and not a web UI project, even though that was clearly stated. So this is Vibe's version and it builds it as we can see. The code has 32% similarities, 82 lines of change, 0 comments, and we can basically work with this to an extent, all right? So we could clear all the buttons work, reload the page, we paste these, and if we compute the diff, there is no difference. We can export to HTML and we can save that. And this, works pretty well. And then we also built a habit tracker. Opencode couldn't deliver on this as far as the web UI was concerned. Again, it built a Python program for this, and that was very useful to us. because we needed a web UI. Yes, I could have prompted it to build out the web UI, but again, that's not the point of this test. And I think a lot of these tests just seem so simple. The prompts are so basic, like Kanban board, quiz, yada, yada, yada. But I'm not going to build out a full-blown SaaS in these videos. The point is to just get us to think about the tools we use, the results, the consequences of the tools we use, and what to expect when we use certain tools for certain tasks. And really, that is the intent here. So the habit tracker from Mistral Vibe, it's fine. It seems to work pretty well. We have streaks, so if I log this every single day, it grows in the streak numbers grow. I can show that I complete this today, and the more I complete it, okay, because it's today, it only has to wait till tomorrow before it tells me that, before the streak actually counts. So it seems to work pretty well. And so a few other things we could go into was how long it took these harnesses to sort of complete the task. The time varied across different tasks, and sometimes Opencode will be faster than Vibe, and Vibe will be faster than Opencode. And it's neither here nor there. But I think Vibe was a bit more reliable than Opencode from my testing. From this test, these set of tests that I ran, with this particular model, Mistral Medium 3.5, Vibe seemed to be a bit more reliable, and arguably makes sense because Vibe is Mistral's product, and they must have gone out of their way to make it work really well with their models. And Opencode is just like Opencode. You could use any harness, any model, pardon me, with Opencode, and the results sort of varies. And so I don't want to spend too much time going over really tiny details. Mistral Vibe is a really cool product. If you make use of Mistral Medium to build software, to write your code, I do think you should stick to Mistral Vibe and not outsource it to Opencode. I understand the convenience that comes with Opencode, but I don't think the trade-off is currently worth it given what I just saw. So I hope this was helpful. Thank you so very much for watching. If you'd like to see more videos like this, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe. We make AI tools videos like this one. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.